We'll figure that out.
So we're live.
We're here.
Hey, Lance.
What are we doing?
We're doing a podcast.
We're starting another podcast.
Yep. I am one of your hosts, Alex Gore.
I am one of your other hosts, Lance Psycho.
And what is this podcast about, Lance?
This podcast is about documenting the entrepreneurial journey of our firm over the past 7 years. And I think we're going to try to do this organically. Tell a series of stories, successes, failures, how we started, how we met. And on that note, who are we? What do we do?
So thanks for hitting me with that curveball. So our firm is F9 Productions, and I think what's going to differentiate this podcast from some others, I think there's some like us, is that we are the principals of a firm. The firm started just me and you 7 years ago. You kind of half started it before, but in my dining room.
Yeah.
And we had no furniture, anything like that. You lived downstairs, I lived upstairs. And now we built it to about eight people. And we do residential work, anything from additions to just regular residential to 24-unit townhomes.
Yep, multifamily stuff, big stuff. We've been doing some group homes. One of the cornerstones of our firm is that we do building information modeling. So we are one of the producers of most of the content that's on ArcCat.
And, go to ArcCat, get your stuff.
Go to arccat.com. We've also started a couple of different websites where we sell BIM content specifically for Revit.
That brings us to our first sponsor,
RevitFurniture.com.
Go there, get what you need, templates, Revit furniture, everything. And then other than BIM, so we don't just do BIM. We do BIM, obviously, in all of our projects, but what Lance is getting at is we make the content. And then the next thing that we're working on and gearing up for, and I think you'll be excited to hear and follow us on our journey, is we're doing design build. I think that's a dream for a lot of people.
It's a dream for a lot of people, especially serious architects who are consider themselves more entrepreneurs than architects. And I think that's where Alex and I do. We have a running joke with our friends that we're serial entrepreneurs. I actually remember Alex pointing that out in a meeting once about this other client that we had that I think the client called himself a serial entrepreneur, and we just love made up titles.
Yeah. What's the joke in that? That we just make up our own titles?
That we just make up our own titles, yeah.
Yeah. So I think here's what I was getting to. The differentiator is that we're actually doing it, and we're giving you an inside look into the firm. That's why it's called Into the Firm. Lance and I have these discussions all the time. We have them with our employees, and we want to take you on that journey. And I remember reading the book. I probably suggested it to you. It was called Kindergarten Chats by...
Yeah, you've suggested that before. Another book that he suggested that I've never read.
Yeah.
I've just taken what I like to call Al Cliff Notes.
There you go. So Kindergarten Chats is by Louis Sullivan, who was the mentor to Frank Lloyd Wright, and his mentor was Frank Furness. So there's this whole line of architects that mentored each other, basically like Aristotle, Plato. There's that line too. Archimedes. Is he in that line? Maybe.
You tell me. You're the reader.
But what was great about that book was, for some reason, more than ever, I felt like it was an older wise man, like a mentor, just whispering in my ear. I think I was reading at night. I just felt so comfortable.
Was this before we started the firm, or was this during?
Before. So before I went to Leapskin,
okay,
I had a couple weeks. So I just tried to read 10 books in 10 days. And I read 12 books in like 15 days. And it was the best time of my life. It was awesome, but like
better than having a baby. He just had a baby.
I love you, hon. Annie Atlas, you are my number one. All that. So my baby is the best. Thank you. Yeah. But so we want to be that voice in your ear that when you're on car ride, if you're just listening to work and give you that perspective. And learn along with us, because we'll give you some good stories about how we started a firm, because I know it's quite a mystery. I don't know if it's a mystery. I just think there's multiple ways to do it.
I think there's multiple ways to do it, and I think this podcast could actually be for more than just architects or even engineers or design professionals. I think when we use the word firm, that's a term we're used to using because it describes what we do the best, I think.
Yeah.
But I think it's business in general. I think it's your own little entrepreneurial endeavors, and I think there's actually even just fundamentals you can bring into your life that we'll kind of try to touch base on.
Yeah. We always try to, in our practice, boil everything down to the fundamentals and then ration up from there. You might have heard that from Elon Musk. that's because it's the first time I heard of that term. That's what we've been doing for years. It's called first principles. But I think that what Lance is getting to, that applies to, business. It applies. We have an online business. Now we're going to have a building business, and eventually we will probably have a product-based businesses. So I think we will cover that whole entrepreneur journey, and you'll be there in the front seat.
Yeah. So join us. So a little bit about ourselves. So Alex and I met in college. We went to North Dakota State University. Go Bison.
Go Bison.
And we both attended the same architecture school, and the very first architecture studio that that you could take, Alex and I were in it, and
instantly fell in love.
Well, that's a lie. We didn't like each other at first. Alex claims that he didn't like me because I was always hitting on the girls, and I don't know if he was just jealous or what the heck was going on.
I don't know why. Know what?
It was maybe. I think it was maybe just because. So you'll get to know me on this podcast. I'm type A and pretty sure about myself. I mean, I would just go out there and say cocky. So I think that might have had something to do with it. I have no idea.
I also had this weird thing when I was young, is that I couldn't show too much interest in one girl, because then the other girls wouldn't like me because I'm going after this one girl. You soon realize, so if you're any younger person listening, is that, man, that's the wrong approach. Because
why is that the wrong approach?
I got a wife and kid.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's just the wrong approach.
You just want to put it this way. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, I think is what he's trying to get at.
No,
not at all.
I'm saying, this is what I'm saying. Everyone knows this. You date multiple people before you settle down.
It's true.
So if you think I can't be interested in one person, well, then how are you ever going to get the girl? And if it doesn't work out, they date someone else, you date someone else, and it all works out.
Yeah, it's true. So we were in this first design studio, and I didn't like Alex because he kept playing Michael Jackson over and over again. So I actually had a legitimate reason. And for some reason, I was not into Michael Jackson at that point. I don't know.
I know. Michael Jackson, I used to play it also at parties until someone
repeat.
Yeah, because he's really good. Then someone broke the CD while I was away. So then I not blessed them with Neil Diamond on repeat.
Good, yeah.
That's what they get.
Yeah, Neil Diamond blessed them. So in that first studio, I think that was when I started to see the big project we had. In hindsight, it's a really small project, but the first project we had with this professor, who ended up being like kind of a very big mentor for us later on.
Shout out Professor Booker.
Yeah, shout out Booker. So what we had to do is we had to make a retreat for ourselves. So it was basically just a shelter for yourself. And it was in Arizona or something, the Gila Mountains, New Mexico. It was in New Mexico.
I thought it was on an island.
I think Alex, this is where he started to break the rules, and I started to see that he doesn't like to follow rules unless it's the ones that he makes up for himself.
Those are the best ones.
So we get down to the final design critiques, and I was very meaningful and tactful in like what I was doing. I used the materials that you could use and stuff like that. And I thought the presentation went pretty well. Then Alex gets up there, and he made a pretty cool structure. It was very simple. It made sense. But then in the middle of it was a fire pit. And in the fire pit, he literally had, I don't know, what was it, like a white toothpick or something like that, or just pieces of paper?
That I think I carved out of wood. Bones.
Yeah.
Is where I think you're going.
So they were bones. Right? And this professor, God bless him, is there was all different kinds of professors, but this one is especially critical about being sustainable. Like everything about him was, it's got to be sustainable, it's got to be green. So we asked Alex, so what's in the middle? Great project, you did a great job, but what's in the fire pit? To which Alex said,
those are the bones of the dead animals that I killed and ate. Which I think is very sustainable.
To survive. So
because we are out in the middle of nowhere. I
distinctly remember that critique, and I thought, oh, this kid is either stupid or he's got some balls.
And we're still figuring that out.
We're still trying to figure that out. And I thought it was easily the most unique response or curveball that he could have thrown that professor. And I made it a point, like, I have to get to know this guy. And the other reason was because he seemed like he was just really friendly and gregarious even though I didn't like him. And
Yeah.
it seemed like everybody gravitated to this guy. He just had a good energy about him. So that semester ended. We still didn't like each other. And then we jumped into the next semester, and lo and behold, we were in the same studio. I think we were all throughout college. You know, ended up taking 10 studios, including grad school. We were in the same one except for one, which was urban design. We weren't in the, you were in Faulkner's and I was in Booker's or something.
Final thesis we weren't.
Final thesis, but then
I moved my desk over.
he moved his desk because we had to be hanging out.
Yeah, and then same thing about Lance is, you know, people would gravitate around him too. So I thought, that was interesting. Then in third year we did projects and we had groups with.
But go back to the second semester. I don't know if we got assigned seating, but I thought that I remember that I sat across from you on purpose, and I thought you did it on purpose too. Because
I think so.
Like I got to figure this out.
I got to
figure this out. So we got through that semester. We got along. We started to just talk at that point. I think tolerate each other.
Yep.
And then third year.
Yep. Third year, then we did group projects with other people, and it went all right. But then afterwards, I think we just looked at each other and we were like, why don't we just start doing this together?
What happened was we each were the leaders of groups of about 3 or 4, and our teammates just ended up being just terrible. I mean, and not that they were bad designers. No. It was just hard to herd.
There we go.
They're like competing personalities and everything.
Shout out to all of our friends that we go fishing with. They're actually great designers and all that, but it was like herding cats. That's what it was.
Yeah.
It was like, just imagine if you have talented designers and then it's like, try to get them on one schedule and go together. And I actually had one that was terrible. We each had one that was terrible.
Yeah. We actually had one that was terrible. And then there were just basically, I think the other 2 in the group, besides Alex and ourselves, I think there was competing egos. I think people didn't know their place, so to speak, at that point, and like taking the lead and working as a team. I mean, you have to fall into some kind of, hierarchy. Right, even in our firm, we do it. Right, you'll be the lead, then I'll switch to the lead, and then we'll switch back, and stuff like that. So there was none of that. Anyway, but what we did see in value on both of us from going through that exercise with other people and being team leaders was that I think we understood at that point. Oh my goodness! I think both of us can lead together.
Yep. Because
we complemented each other. I'm a very linear type A engineer, more engineer than architect type of thinker,
Yeah.
And Alex is big picture, telling a story about the process, bring poetry into the whole thing.
That leads me to 2 things. I feel like I'll be the tangent man in this podcast.
Oh yeah.
But so I'm emailing because of our sponsor, RevitFurniture.com, and we won't keep plugging it. It's just a funny thing. But Lance, I'm emailing different firms, and a lot of them I'm realizing there's 2 heads. There's 2 heads to a lot of these firms.
Even if they're not equal principals, there's still 2 heads.
No, I'm saying equal principals.
Oh, there actually
so
is.
I'm finding a whole bunch of them, and we always thought that we were unique, like. Why we work well together. Like you could say, if you boil it down, this is not necessarily true, but Lance is science and I might be soul, right? We'll switch.
I'm soulless is what he's saying.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. We'll switch those roles, and it's a little bit too defined than what we really are. But I think that's why we work well together, is that dichotomy. We can pass, clients back and forth of who fits. We can talk to each other and vent, which is key, which is kind of like this, what this inside the firm is that, we talk to each other and now we're bringing it to you. But that's more prevalent, Lance, than you'd think, is two-headed beasts in architecture.
I'm surprised. I thought we were unique. I like to think we're 1 in a million, but apparently we're just common folk.
Like 1 in 100.
Yeah, 1 in 100. 1 in 100.
1 in 20. 1 in 20.
Okay, so we went on to actually work together in 4th year studios. We went on to win a skyscraper competition. And then we both did very well in graduate school. There was 2 prizes you could win. One was the McKinsey Award at North Dakota State. It basically says you're the best. You
thesis.
Thesis.
Keyword. One project.
I beat Alex out there. He took a very far second at best.
No. So I won the Alpha Rho Chi Award.
Kai. He won the award and never.
It's C. There's a C in it.
There's a CH.
which is the best student. The best student voted by.
I like to think it's a pity.
No, so they're like, oh, we can't have Alex win them both. We might as well give Lance one.
Yeah.
We might as well give him the thesis as
Yeah.
a pity vote.
Yeah, talk about affirmative action.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, he only got into the whole school after first year. You get cut from 300 people to 50. He's the one we are whittling. He cut his finger. They felt bad for him.
Yep.
They let him into the firm.
They're like, you might as well come in.
They stopped the whole whittling portion of the whole school.
Whittling. What he's talking about is you would get a piece of basswood, a thick piece of basswood, not as skinny or small as what you model with, but a giant piece of basswood.
Yeah.
And you were to whittle it down to a utensil you could eat with. And lo and behold, I wasn't paying attention one day and sliced my finger almost off with a buck knife.
Yeah.
No bueno.
So that's the only reason you got in and the only reason you're here today. But I would say your thesis might be slightly better than mine. I got preoccupied.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. Anyways, so then what happened, Lance? Because
so we graduated at the top of our class with a bunch of other very, very good students. We like to think that we had one of the best graduating classes in a long time. Like, we'd be up there in the top 5, we like to think, but that's our opinion. Yeah. So after that, we went on to start applying for firms, to different firms. I was looking in Washington, so Portland area, and then Boulder. Boulder was kind of my thing. Actually, Colorado in general.
Who would have thought you were like quite the hippie?
At one point.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you come from the middle of nowhere in North Dakota.
Middle of actual nowhere.
Yeah.
I mean, oil boom country, western side of the state.
You're Native American. That could kind of explain it, but yeah, you picked like the two city. If you would have picked San Francisco too, as
I was looking, but it was too expensive.
Gotcha.
I mean, because when I graduated, I had a child and a fiance, so couldn't just go wherever I wanted to and schlep and sleep on somebody's couch.
Yeah,
like Alex basically did. So I applied in Colorado, had 7 interviews, ended up finally landing a job with a firm that's now defunct and they don't operate anymore. Studio HT, Brad Tomasek, Christopher Hare. Shout out there.
Shout out to those guys.
The great guys, great architects.
They both won Young Architect of the Year of the whole United States. So talk about having 2 guys that are really good.
Really good. Yeah, absolutely. So there you go. There's another example. Two people running a firm, right?
There you go.
So what was great about I took the job out here and only to be laid off 9 months later, because the job I took was in 2008, and then as everybody knows, at least if you're within the last decade and you're listening to this, the Great Recession, right? Alex ended up going to New York.
Yeah, I always wanted to go to New York. I couldn't fathom why you would not want to go to New York. I tried to get Lance to move there.
He did.
My argument was every time you step out your front door, you're in New York. I thought that would suffice.
He'd be like, I'd be like, yeah, I know, I understand. No. What you do is you go downstairs, out the door, you're in New York.
You open it.
Do you get it?
You're right in New York, like right there. So I worked.
And I kept explaining, you just don't have kids. You don't get it.
Yeah. And I'm like, so there's stairs, right? And then you go out the door. So I worked at Studio Daniel Liebskin for about 9-10 months. And then same thing, recession hit.
Alex was laid off first.
I was laid off first. Yes, because you didn't get a job right away in the summer.
Right.
You didn't get it until probably September or something like that.
October of 2008 is when I officially... So, we graduated in your typical May, and then I went back home for a while and did carpentry, and eventually got out here.
Yeah. It was very hard finding a job to begin with during that time.
Very hard.
So then they laid off. Liebskin laid off. There were 66 of us, and they laid off 11. So is that 1 out of 6 or is that 1 out of 5? That's 1 out of 6.
Yeah, 1 out of 6.
Yeah. Which is huge. SOM, and then we just horror stories.
And Alex, at that point, because he was in New York, you had colleagues or somehow you knew people that were in other firms.
Yeah.
So he kind of, and plus he was right off of Wall Street.
Yep. So I remember seeing the people walk out with boxes. We were on the 17th floor. We could look over the ledge. We had like a 2-foot ledge. We were on that plane where we could look over and we saw everyone walking out. And then in New York, since it's so big, but the worlds are so compact. So this is what one of my friends said. Another tangent. He came up from Minneapolis. Jordan, shout out Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I actually like the vibe of Fargo. We're like, oh, why? You know, you live in Minneapolis. It's way better, way cooler. He's like, there's so many people. You fall within, all your friends are within your same, they're all just like you because there's 2 million people. He goes, if you're in Fargo or a smaller town, he's like, you have friends, like one of your friends is in English, one of your friends is in, you know, art, one's an engineer, you know, whatever. And we just thought that was normal. But so what I'm getting at is New York, it's so huge, but that means that
it gets more cliquey.
Yeah, there's 30 of the big architecture firms. Sure. So I know people at SOM, Rem Koolhaas, what's that? Really Shop, right? So, you know, we'd go to those firms and whatever, and we just, horror stories. SOM, 50 gone. Shop, 12 gone. You know, just, I'm sure I'm not getting the numbers right.
And
but they were
Alex and I can't remember how we kept in touch so much. Because we just ended up being, you know, college best buddies, because we worked together so much. But I think it was like through Skype or GChat or something like that, and he starts telling me about all these horror stories, and then I kind of start to panic myself. What month did you get laid off?
February.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So he got laid off in February, and I didn't get laid off until I think June or July of that summer. Then in 2009. Yeah. Something like that.
What was hilarious about that was, so it was kind of, we worked really hard and got laid off, and that was a shock. And I think my girlfriend at the time was there. And I think like after an hour of like telling her this, she's like, maybe we shouldn't go out. And I was like, what? How are you hitting me with that news? Right one.
Oh, it was a double whammy for you.
It was a double whammy. And she's like, no, it's not, you know, she was moving different places. I might be going to a different place, all that other stuff. But I was like, holy cow.
I know. And then you
punched me in the gut.
And then you had to try, and then you struggled to try to get out of, I think your the sort of pseudo leash you had going on. Yep. It was a problem there. And we don't have to get into details, but it was an issue. So it was awful. Nobody likes to be laid off, right? Yep. So Alex ended up going back to grad school. Because he thought, oh, this recession, 1 year.
That's
one year. It's all it's going to last.
Done.
I'm going to come out of this, and I'm going to get a construction management master's degree. Yep. I'm going to know it's going to catch me up of not having, of needing more construction experience, that type of thing. So he went back to school. Of course, we all know that the Great Recession lasted a lot longer than that. For us in Colorado, we kind of only pulled out in about 2013 because that's when we started to grow the firm.
Yep. So when I called you and I said, hey, things are going to hit the fan. And this relates to kind of our first lesson on how to start a firm. I said, I started listening to Pat Flynn. A lot of you guys might know Pat Flynn. I go, Lance, you especially need multiple streams of income, or we need to come up with multiple streams of income. And then you came up with, I'll let you elaborate.
And I wasn't laid off yet when he's telling me this.
Yep. And Lance is like, hey, there's this thing called BIM, Revit. I think I can start making some components. And then I go, okay, I think I can learn how to design a website. Because it was all CSS back then. Do you remember we had those revolving pictures?
On the very first beta F9 website, yeah.
Yeah. And some kid just sent me his portfolio, which I really like. He's from NDSU, shout out. And he had those revolving pictures too. I'm like, oh, harken back to
the good old days.
Yeah. So Lance got on the BIM stuff.
And so I had learned Revit at one of the firms I interned with in Fargo, but then when I moved down here, we ran out of work pretty quick within maybe the first 3 months, 4 months. I mean, it was pretty awful, and honestly, it just drained my existence to even go into work. It was terrible, just sitting there. And so one of the things, but these guys were also our entrepreneurs 100%. I mean, at Studio HT, they really fostered that kind of spirit. So one of the things I worked with and that I really enjoyed doing was starting to build families in Revit. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Revit, those are like the chairs, the windows, the doors, all those kind of things, right? And since at Studio HT, what they were doing was we were doing a lot of high-end homes and high like very boutique spaces. I was always searching for really modern-looking furniture and could never find it. So I thought, man, I bet if I made a bunch of modern furniture, I could somehow sell them on some website. So I kind of went crazy and started making as many as I could before work. I would wake up. This was before I got laid off. I'd wake up at like 4 or 5 to go to work, and for at least an hour or two before work, I would crank out as many of these as I could make.
Yep.
And then after work, I'd get home, we'd eat supper, and I would crank out more. So I was kind of doing 2 jobs, and because I was in panic mode, thinking I'm going to get fired. or laid off rather. There's got to be these multiple streams of income that we talked about. So I started uploading a ton of them to turbosquid.com because they were one of the few places on the web at that point where you could start selling these speculative 3D models. I was uploading so many. I think I ended up uploading 200 or 300 within a month or so. I got the attention of the marketing director, and she said, "Hey, we've noticed the bulk of what you're doing. So I'd made enough of a splash, and these people noticed." And she said, "We're trying to go after manufacturers of building products, i.e., windows, doors, anything you can name, to get them to have us model their products." And so I said, "Oh, great. Well, keep me in mind." Then I did end up getting laid off. So it wasn't like I immediately got work, but I at least planted the seed for that to grow.
Yeah. And then, so I think that's the key. And I think everyone, even if you aren't wanting to start your own firm, ever, I think an alternate source of income or an alternate hobby relating to your profession or something that you love can be super helpful, because that's what Pat Flynn did too. He studied for the lead exams. And then when he was studying, he just wrote blog posts about it. And then he turned that into a study guide, and he started making money that way. And he's like, holy cow, I can make money online. And then I think he got laid off too. So it's sort of an insurance policy. And then we'll get into this more, but that BIM content led us into a work that is basically the foundation of our firm. Mm-hmm. It also led us into making Revit furniture, which of course we'll name drop all the time here. And then it led ultimately for us teaching at CU. We teach at CU Boulder. We teach engineers and architects how to design, draw, make buildings, make bridges in Revit. So it's weird how just something that you dip your toe in or kind of throw off to the side can lead to something huge. So even if it's like Pat Flynn, where TurboSquid, how much money do you think we've made off of TurboSquid?
Oh, not very much.
Bucks?
I would say 500 or less. Yeah. I mean, I think you're talking maybe 200 or less. It's not very much. Every once in a while, I'll get an email. So our content is still up there. It's actually pretty rudimentary because we ended up saying, well, why don't we cut out the middleman and start RevitFurniture.com?
Yeah.
So we did it that way. But I get an email every once in a while that's like $3. You made a $3 sale. It's nothing. Yeah. It's nothing. But it got the attention.
Why don't I see any of that money? Just kidding. So Pat Flynn, I think he made like a decent amount, maybe close to $5,000 a month off of his. I don't know the numbers, but that led him to his podcast about how to make money, and he makes $120 a month. Just over $1 million a year, basically. And that first thing, even if it's not a big money maker, what our lesson is that it can lead to different things, because you're getting your foot wet, you're setting up systems, you can use it multiple times, all that stuff. So if we could encourage you to do anything, it'd be to start putting what you think, an idea or even a hobby, online and just seeing what happens. Just put it out there. Make a website. Man, this reminds me of Tiny House too. We'll cover that in another one. But Tiny House, same thing too.
Yeah,
we just
exactly.
put it out there.
We just put it out there because
led to us on HTTP.
And I think the key is it's got to be a vested, a truly tangible interest. I mean, you have to actually want to do this other offshoot thing that you pursue.
Because it's after hours.
It's after hours, right? And you're tired.
BIM After Dark. That guy. Another shout out. Revit Kid. BIM After Dark. That was all of his stuff. It was after he's working at the firm, like at night putting together. Now, I think he has his own firm too, but I know he makes good money off of that. We partner up on some stuff. Same thing
with him. Yeah. Tim Ferriss would be the last one I'll say that's a good example of that. So Tim Ferriss, everybody should know him. If you don't, Google him, listen to his podcast. He's great. Do you remember his story? His story was that he was a fitness geek, right? And he wanted to make a supplement that enhanced his life. So he made this supplement. It actually didn't have any kind of proven anything or whatever, but it allowed him to break out of his cubicle box at the end of the day. Yeah. So anyway, so I think that's where we're coming from with this whole thing.
Yeah. So you think that's good for a first podcast?
Yeah, I think so. I think well, actually, how about this? So I think the last thing we're going to end with is for today anyway. Just this is sort of the pilot. Is we touched on a lot of things, but where we'd like to start with on the next podcast is just as a preview is where we started from fundamentally.
Yeah,
and then try to give you guys some insight into the fundamentals that we learned from our very first clients to how we built off of a base, and then how we've even in the next podcast after that how we've dealt with some of our worst clients, and they happened right away, but like those valuable learning lessons from the positive and the negative, and how you can transform.
Yeah. So if this was the layoff episode, hey, it's getting started, working at a firm, getting laid off. Next podcast will be how we started a firm. And each podcast will probably follow the format of telling a story, because stories are a great way to communicate, a real life story, and then maybe something that's going on now. So it's probably like a hark back to the past of how to do something, what's successful, what isn't successful, and hey, what are we doing? Dealing with the city, doing something entrepreneurial. Hey, maybe here's an idea. So we hope you follow us along on the journey.
Okay, we'll see you next episode.
Bye-bye.